Welcome to Food Revolution Conversations, where we explore healthy, ethical, and sustainable food for all. Welcome to this Food Revolution conversation. I am Ocean Robbins, co-founder and CEO of Food Revolution Network. And we are here today to talk about healthcare and disease symptom management and the critical difference between the two. We're going to talk about systems and why it is that we in the United States spend 19% of our gross domestic product on disease symptom management, but have the fattest and sickest population in the history of the world. We're going to talk about the underlying symptoms and systems that create that. And more importantly, we're going to talk about solutions. And we're doing that with a brilliant doctor who is one of the foremost leaders in the movement to transform healthcare to truly promote health for humanity. He's Dr. Sean Hashmi. He is a practicing nephrologist and obesity medicine specialist at Southern California Kaiser Permanente. Dr. Hashmi serves as the Regional Director for Clinical Nutrition and Weight Management at Southern California Kaiser Permanente. And in this role, he's responsible for developing a comprehensive obesity management strategy involving lifestyle medicine and obesity medicine for the 4.6 million members that Kaiser Permanente serves. He is driven by a lifelong commitment to be of service to others, and he also provides evidence-based health, nutrition, and wellness research through his nonprofit organization, Self Principle. Dr. Hashmi and I got to talking a little while back as I was trying to understand what it was that Kaiser Permanente was doing that has put it at the forefront of many of the efforts to transform healthcare in the United States. And I wanted to know who was behind it, who was making this happen, because this is a big corporation with all the same forces that are pushing the insurance industry and the hospital industry and the medical care industry in the directions that it's been known for so long, which ultimately are about treating the symptoms of disease. And I wanted to see, well, what's happening that's causing Kaiser to start to do some things differently? And I think I might have found the answer. This man is absolutely at the forefront of changing the way medicine is thought about and the way it's practiced by emphasizing lifestyle first. Dr. Hashmi, thanks so much for being here and for all that you do.
It's such an honor to be on the show. I'm delighted to be with you guys. And, you and I had a chance to talk, and I was so fascinated by our conversation to see how much we're both have in common and how passionate we both are about pushing the right type of message out there.
Absolutely. Well, it's urgent and it's very personal, and it's personal for you too. In 2004, I believe it was, you lost your sister to an epileptic seizure. And can you share how that experience impacted your life and your relationship to healthcare?
There's very few things that happen in your life where all of a sudden you find your why. And as tragic of an event that was for me, it also helped me to define my why and make it very clear as to what my purpose in life was. My sister, who was 4 years older than me, she was very much into nutrition and health and so forth. She had epilepsy. And one evening when I came home from work, I used to teach martial arts. I would stay up really late at the classes and studio, come home very tired and go straight to bed. I remember my mother, she ran in my room 5 o'clock in the morning yelling, "Wake up, your sister is dying." I jumped out of bed. I ran into her room, and my father had picked her up off the floor and laid her in bed. I called 911. I didn't know how to do CPR. The 911 operator tried to guide me, but I couldn't open her mouth. And what was the hardest part of that experience was my sister had enrolled me in an EMT class, an emergency medical technician class, where they teach you how to do CPR. The class was going to start the following week. And to know how tragic life is sometimes, if it was a few days later, would it have made a difference? Knowing what I know now, the answer is probably no, but try telling that to your heart. Your heart doesn't want to believe that. And so there's this fire that's inside you that's always burning. And every time you get a chance to help somebody, you get a chance to make somebody live a little bit longer so they get back to their loved ones. It heals you a little bit. And it sounds interestingly and strangely selfish, but by helping others, I feel better. And so that's always been my true passion, was to find a way to give back to the world. And doing what I do around nutrition, which is sort of putting out the fire before the fire starts. There's so much beauty in that.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, bless you for that. There's the old saying that what doesn't kill us makes us stronger, and some things maybe kill parts of us and strengthen other parts of us. I mean, there's losses that we can never really recover from, but somehow we find a way to make some meaning out of it, to gain some value from it, to make something good of it. And some things, like the loss of your sister, are just too heartbreaking for them to happen in vain, right? And so what an honor of her life and memory that you're carrying on, serving others and helping so many other people not have to lose their sisters and their mothers and their daughters and their friends, because you're helping them make changes that cause them to never need medical interventions in the first place, or to need a lot less of them. I'm curious also how you think that healthcare access might have played into all of that, and how that influenced your journey.
I think that's probably the hardest part. We grew up in a very poor family, and we didn't have insurance at that time, so we relied on the county system. My sister, my mother, and I, we would take 3 buses to get to the county hospital, which was about 2 hours away. On bus rides, it made it very, very difficult. And when we would get there, it was so hard to spend time with the doctor, and for the doctor to understand how hard was it for us to get there. And that left a very deep impression on me. As doctors, we're not just healers or teachers. And when people come to our office, they put the most precious thing they have into our hands. And what an honor, what a privilege for us to be able to take that extra minute to do something. And all of the basics that go into preventative care, it wasn't something that we heard about. My mother later on had colon cancer, and we looked at all of the things that we could have done differently to prevent that from her happening. My father's status on becoming a pre-diabetic, my uncle who died of diabetes, all of these conditions that we associate with lifestyle that you could change. In the hospital, I'm a kidney specialist, so the number 1 cause of kidney disease that leads to dialysis is diabetes. Number 2 is diabetes. Number 3 is diabetes. And of course, high blood pressure and obesity are tied together. So when we look at the healthcare system, we have such an amazing opportunity to be able to influence people early in the game instead of waiting till something actually bad happens. And that's where I feel like I wish that we were more proactive in healthcare in general.
So there's an increase in screening for disease, whether it's pap smears or various other tests that can be done, hoping to catch diseases earlier before they become too widespread or perhaps fatal. But that's still not really, it's called prevention, but it's really not prevention. It's just early detection, right?
Yes.
But prevention is creating the circumstances out of which no disease happens in the first place.
Right.
And you're saying there isn't much focus on that yet. And there's this question, I want to hone in a little more on this question of how long does the patient have to stay in the insurance plan for it to become cost effective to pay for prevention? And there was a recent study Tufts University conducted looking at the cost effectiveness, actually, of produce prescription programs. Mm-hmm. And the researchers basically concluded that they were pretty darn cost effective, that when doctors prescribed fruits and vegetables, or even more broadly, healthy foods to their patients, that they could get significant results in terms of quality of life added and reduction in risk of cardiovascular disease and many other ailments. They ended up concluding that the cost per quality of life year was generally considered on the lower end compared to a lot of the other things that are covered. And yet, we still don't see this happening on a wide scale. And I wonder if most insurers are thinking, well, my gosh, our patients could leave next year and go to some other insurer. So what incentive do we have, unless they have enough retention, to bring down our long-term costs? Do they even want to bring down their costs? Some people say that the bigger the pie is, the more they spend, the more they can charge, and that's their game. How do the economics work here? And is that really one of our central problems in enhancing preventive care?
It depends on how a healthcare organization is structured. The organization that I work for, that I'm very proud to work for, it's designed as a nonprofit. What that basically means is we are designed to save money, not to do extra procedures to make more money, because Kaiser and Permanente, the Kaiser is the insurance arm, so we have our own insurance model, which means our model is built around the less we do, the better off it is. And what that means by doing less is the more we spend on prevention, the more we save down the road. And what we find, at least with Kaiser Permanente, is our members stay with us a very, very long time. In fact, when we look at it, we'll oftentimes find 3 generations of people that are already part of Kaiser Permanente. 3 generations already, and we've been around since the 60s. So as a result of that, there's a huge incentive. But what you speak of is a really important point, which is what we know from the data is food prescription models work. And the reason for that is there is so much confusion on what to eat. Everybody's an expert when it comes to this 4-letter word. It's just awful. It's diet. It's, some clever person added a T to the word die, and now everybody's running around trying to focus on a diet. But when we look at places like the blue zones, where there's the largest living populations of centenarians, what we find is they don't know what the word diet is. They just actually practice a way of life, which is they eat a predominantly whole foods, plant-based diet. And they don't even realize, well, I didn't realize it has a name. This is what we've always eaten. So for doctors, what our job really is first is to learn about this, because there is a gap. It's making sure that we have the educational opportunities. And part of why I started our nonprofit, selfprinciple.org, was all of the research that I did reviewing thousands of studies. There were 4 concepts, which was sleep, exercise, love, and food. That's self. So self-principle came up because those 4 concepts, as simple as they are, if you follow those, you have won 2/3 of the battle right there. When we look at things like genetics and everything, the most genetics plays is about 30% in your life. 70% is lifestyle factors. It's self. If you focus on that, you can do great. And for organizations, the more they invest in programs like being able to have partnerships where they're giving patients easy access to fresh produce, easy access to fruits and vegetables. We're not talking anything fancy, but having farmers markets. One of the things I'm so proud of, aside from the COVID time, pre-COVID and so forth, we've always had farmers markets. And what's fantastic is I do a lot of my shopping once a week at our farmers market, which is right on our campus.
Yeah, that's so inspiring. And I'm a Kaiser Permanente member, and to walk in for an exam or a visit and literally walk through a farmer's market on the way on the hospital grounds is so heartwarming, because there's a pharmacy. Now there can also be a farm with an F-A-C as well, right? Where patients can really see that this matters and that this is actually in the center of the hospital in some cases, right? Wonderful, so important. And I was also struck, I have to say, I had minor shoulder surgery a couple of years ago. And my surgeon actually recommended that I do this visualization. They sent me this audio track before the surgery, and they said their studies show that people who listen to this track and visualize this before, during, and after surgery have improved outcome. They heal faster. They're more likely to get the desired results, lower inflammation, less stress. And I was like, okay, great. And here's the funny thing. I'm the kind of person who would do that. I'm the kind of person who might have written a recording like that, but I still probably wouldn't have sought it out if my doctor didn't actually send it to me. And so I listened to this recording many times before the surgery, and I pictured how my body was going to respond, how I was going to be relaxed and at peace, how angels were going to surround me and I would be protected and guided, and my shoulder would open up to receive the knife even before it came, and then it would heal right up perfectly, and the surgeon would be guided to just do the perfect thing. And I saw all that, and I don't know if it actually changed my outcome. I certainly healed very quickly. And then they also recommended that I have headphones on during the surgery to listen to another one they had specifically for that spot. And then there's another one for afterwards. And, some people might call that woo-woo or whatever, but when my doctor told me to do it, and they said there was science backing up its efficacy, I was like, all right, I'm in. And then I thought, wow, the world is changing. If a major hospital has a farmer's market in it, if there's no vending machines for Coke or Pepsi in Kaiser anymore, which is also true, by the way, thank you for your leadership on that. If we're being prescribed to do visualizations before, during, and after surgery, these are big changes happening. And I'll also say that after every physical exam with my doctor every year, I get a follow-up email with a little quiz saying, did your doctor discuss diet and lifestyle with you? Yes or no? And I'm thinking that this data is being gathered because somebody wants to track it, because there's a system-wide encouragement for doctors like mine to discuss diet and lifestyle with their patients. And I'm thinking there probably are not a lot of other healthcare systems doing this, but Kaiser really is kind of leading the way. Do these kinds of changes give you some hope?
Oh my God, absolutely. One of the things that, at least for me, when I go to work every day, I'm surrounded by incredibly passionate people. So in Southern California, where I serve in my current role, which is the Regional Director of Clinical Nutrition and Weight Management, I have physicians who are absolutely passionate about this work. They're doing the research, they're bringing the studies, they're giving lectures to other doctors. There is so much knowledge that's being distributed right now. It's incredible. We have people who are getting boarded in lifestyle medicine. We have people getting boarded in obesity medicine. Now we have people getting dual boarded in both of them because they want to know all of the details. In the work that I do, we lay nutrition and lifestyle as the foundation. Before we talk about anything else, we find that that's the most important conversation. And we always want to meet the member where they're at. So we ask for permission to talk about these things. So they never feel like, the doctor is telling you, you have to go out and do this. No, Mrs. Smith, what are you able to do? Let's talk about it. Can I have permission to talk to you about your weight today? What works for you? What are your barriers? And you're fascinated by the stories and how difficult it is. And then you find that, they don't need to go and do something drastic. Even a simple thing as like adding a little bit more fruits and vegetables to their plate is a great start. Next time they come, we talk about something else. So those little incremental things that, kind of like what BJ Fogg talks about in his books, little habits. It's amazing that organizations value that. We value that. We have physicians who value that. And we serve primarily as teachers of patients and teachers of other doctors.
Yeah. Thank you so much for that. And in case anyone's wondering, this is not an advertisement for Kaiser Permanente. We're here to talk about healthcare and how we transform the system. And Kaiser's got a long way to go too.
Absolutely.
But we are here to share stories of solutions and possibilities because I think they give us hope. And they show what's possible, not just in Kaiser, but for everybody. Kaiser's only in about 12 states. So we're working all over the world here. So a lot of people don't have access to Kaiser, but all of us can learn something here about what's possible and can advocate for more change everywhere in medicine. Dr. Hashmi, I've often thought that a doctor who doesn't know about food is a little bit like a firefighter who doesn't know about water. That, food really is the foundation of health. What you eat literally becomes you, and it dramatically impacts your likelihood of dying of certain diseases or living a long and healthy life. Do you see it similarly?
I think the challenge that, at least on physician side, is when it comes to training, it's not that we have a lack of knowledge. It's what's happening is there's so much misinformation that is making the whole process very, very confusing. Sometimes I'll have physicians come and talk to me about the ketogenic diet, and they'll say, I have patient X who's lost 150 pounds on the ketogenic diet. And
Yeah.
my response to that is, okay, that's great. And, wonderful that you were able to make somebody commit to healthier changes. Now, what we know about the ketogenic diet is for weight loss, we get it. But, I can also starve you and you'll lose weight. The question is, are we getting health or are we getting weight? And what I tell every single person when I give a talk is, if you go for weight loss, you get weight loss. If you go for health, you get better brain, better vision, better heart, better lungs, better kidneys, better GI tract,
Yes.
and you get weight loss with it. So from that perspective, our job is to focus on weight loss. No, focus on health. Yes. If we get you down the right healthy road, we stop the body shaming, because that's a very real aspect. Patients may have lost 150 pounds. The doctor tells them, what? I need you to lose more weight. No, let's celebrate what you have done. Because if I celebrate with you, you feel more connected to me and you're more likely to listen to me. So when it comes to organizations, the best we can do is start with medical schools. Start with the education piece in medical schools. And if you start teaching them there, they are open, they're receptive. It's before the point where they've had so many experiences to make it really hard to break down those walls. And then in residency, to actually have dietitians involved in that so that there's a way to understand. Right now, we have different diets for CHF, different diets for diabetes, different diets for kidney disease.
Yeah.
And one of the things that I told, at least our local folks, was it's actually the same diet. It's not a different diet. And we're confusing people by making all of these nuanced statements. But it turns out, if you're looking for a low sodium diet, it's a whole foods plant-based diet. If you're looking for a diet that's ideal for kidney patients, that's lower in protein, that's a whole foods plant-based diet. If you're looking for a diet for diabetics that is lower on the glycemic index scale, that's also a whole foods plant-based diet. So you have all of the same concepts found in one dietary pattern.
Yes, so true. I often reflect that if you drive your car into a brick wall, the death certificate might say impalement by brick wall, but the truth is you're driving, and the modern diet and lifestyle are kind of a recipe for chronic illness of all kinds. And we don't know whether it's going to show up as cancer, type 2 diabetes, or obesity, or heart issues, or maybe all of the above in many cases. But some sort of dis-ease is inevitable when we don't treat our system optimally. And so I think it's so important that you're learning how to bring the significant authority that you carry as a doctor working with patients who trust you with their health and their lives, to try to help them make changes. That said, I'm struck by how often people who know what to do still can't do it. Even sometimes people will have a leg amputated and they could see it coming, and their doctor said you need to eat differently, and they actually couldn't do it, even with everything at stake like that. Do you see this happen? And what do you think it is that keeps people from doing what they know, even when their lives are on the line sometimes?
This is probably one of the hardest parts of my job. As a kidney doctor, one of the things we take care of is patients when their kidneys fail. They end up on dialysis. And when they end up on dialysis, some patients, not all, some patients feel like, look, I've already lost the battle. What's the point? And sometimes it's even harder for them to follow your advice. But I've had patients where they've lost both of their legs. They've lost their arm. They've lost fingers. They've lost eyesight in one or both eyes. And yet they can't give up their junk food. You see, when we talk about things that are addictive, the three most addictive substances that we have in food is salt, sugar, and fat. And the most addictive is when you combine all three in one. You can look at something like potato chips and wonder, I remember there was a brand, Lay's, it always had the commercial, right? You can't just eat one. They're absolutely right.
Yeah.
Because when you see the portion of the brain that it lights up and you see the high that people get, and it's the same place that things like cocaine, heroin lights up, you know how powerful that statement is. So when we look at a whole foods plant-based diet, the reason it works so much better is because naturally it's low in salt. Naturally, it has beautiful amounts of fiber and water. And so when you're getting the sugar from fruits, it doesn't have the same effect as you're getting the sugars from your sodas. And so then people say, but I have this craving and I want to get diet sodas. And the issue you face is as long as they go for their diet drinks, which are anywhere between a couple of hundred times sweeter to as much as 26,000 times sweeter, you are creating this massive addiction for sweet. That's why when you have an apple, it doesn't taste as sweet. And so this barrier is an addiction. It's a food addiction. And the problem as a society is we haven't gotten to a point of saying how many of us have some degree of food addiction. I would say every single one of us.
Right, right.
We were designed to like stuff that was sweet, and we were designed not to like stuff that was bitter. That's evolutionary. We just made the sweet portion 26,000 times sweeter.
Yeah, absolutely. And we live in a society where, just to follow the metaphor, it's as if cocaine and heroin were available on every corner, where we were shamed by family members for not consuming them, and they tasted good, right? So we can see how hard it is to overcome those addictive pulls. We've got baby bottles with Coca-Cola logos on them. We are trained from early childhood to develop these addictions, and we're evolutionarily wired for it. So it's a lot to overcome. And sometimes pain pushes. Sometimes people really are motivated by feeling that their life is on the line to make big changes. Other times vision pulls. We see a possibility and we want to move into it. It doesn't help, though, when doctors are fundamentally clueless about the link between food and health. My aunt was dealing with serious cancer issues. We didn't know if she'd live or die. She ended up making it, thank goodness, after a life-altering surgery and immense amounts of treatment that were devastating for her health and well-being. But not once in the entire journey did any of her oncologists say a word about diet. And I'm sure that they thought they were being kind. They didn't want to add more stress. She's going through enough already. It's hard enough for her to eat. Why on earth would they want to make her, scared about the foods that are familiar? So they thought they were being reassuring and loving. But I don't think it was so loving, because my aunt wanted to live. And now that she's on the other side of it, the last thing she wants is a recurrence or cancer to pop up somewhere else in her body. And her doctor's not telling her the data, which is that, of course, no diet is a cure-all against cancer, but you can cut your risk by 50% or so with diet and lifestyle. And someone in her position who wants to do everything possible not to end up back there again or worse, should at least be told what the information is. And she wasn't. And unfortunately, she doesn't always listen to me. Maybe she'll listen to you, but we've got work to do, don't we?
We do.
I'm curious, how do you see medicine changing? I know right now we have, doctors are less likely than the general population to be overweight or obese, but we're still talking 40% overweight, 1 in 4 are obese. A lot of doctors have their own habits to deal with here. What's it going to take to truly get food front and center here?
As we see, with modern medicine becoming more and more expensive, more and more organizations are starting to look at this concept. And especially on our governmental bodies, as they start to have folks like yourself who are making such a strong push to ask and to push for programs that actually support nutrition education, support looking at preventative care, it makes such an impact. Healthcare, the way it's going right now, it's going to become so expensive that it will be impossible unless we're able to add these very basics in. And I'll tell you, when you were talking about your family member's story about cancer, there used to be an old saying, and this is not going back years ago, where there was this concept of an obesity paradox. And the obesity paradox was this: if you had somebody who was older, or if you had somebody with cancer, the paradox said that if they lost weight, they actually did worse. So in the old days, what the oncologist and a lot of other folks, and especially folks got older, was they would never ask people to lose weight. Even in end-stage renal disease, it was the same obesity paradox. My research was looking at what I called the obesity paradox. And what that essentially showed was that if you lost weight, it wasn't that you lost weight and now your mortality went up. It was the loss of lean body mass. So what that meant was if you ate healthy foods, you would naturally lose body fat. There was nothing wrong with that. If you moved more, you would build lean muscle. If anything, that actually improved your survival. So this concept that they had in the day was just a lack of information.
Right.
And so now with healthcare organizations, we have a lack of information where we feel like, why don't we come up with a pill that costs $1 million that we know nobody can truly afford? Yet, if we start these people on eating lots of leafy greens early on in the game, we focus on a healthy plate model. We don't focus on a pyramid model. Those pyramids were never designed to work. That's why, for me, I'm a big proponent of the healthy plate, which is half your plate is fruits and vegetables. A quarter of your plate is protein. Tofu, by the way, is wonderful source of protein, beans, lentils. Then a quarter of your plate that's left over is healthy starches, right? So whole grains are an excellent source. If you do that, that's your healthy plate model. And as organizations start to shift away, so one of the programs that I'm involved in for weight loss, we built it around the healthy plate. I did a lot of research to make sure that it made sense. And we shifted away from this idea of trying to confuse the heck out of people. But that's a start. Harvard has one. In Canada's society, they have one. All of those are saying the same message. So there's a movement, but I have to tell you, the work that you're doing has a lot to do with the amount of pressure that these organizations are facing in driving this change.
Well, thank you. I'm honored by your acknowledgement. And we're right back at you. So grateful for the work that you're doing, advocating for systemic change. One of our campaigns has been to work with the American College of Lifestyle Medicine to change medical school education. We realized that a lot of schools teach to the test, and that the National Board of Medical Examiners has a bank of questions that are used to be given to medical school graduates. They have to pass the test in order to become licensed as physicians. And these tests, out of 15,000 questions in the bank, how many do you think related directly to diet and lifestyle for disease prevention? If you guessed 0, you're pretty right on. So we worked with the American College of Lifestyle Medicine to create a bank of 1,000 questions that are all rigorously researched and academically on point. And these are now being added as a resource for the medical schools. So the next step is to advocate to get enough schools to use them that they become part of the mandatory portion of the bank instead of the optional portion of the bank. But certainly I think it's an important step, and our members, I'm glad to say, step forward and helped raise the funds to move this along. We're now focused on 2 other campaigns, the Produce Prescription Program and Double Up Bucks. And I want to talk about Double Up Bucks for a second, and equity and the social justice side of all this, because as you well know, a lot of people can't afford healthy food in the current context. Twinkies has 14 government subsidized ingredients. Broccoli has none. We have tens of billions of dollars in taxpayer subsidy that are bringing down the price of commodities crops. And this is essentially subsidizing factory farm meat, high fructose corn syrup, white flour, and processed junk food. And it's not bringing down the price of fruits and vegetables and nuts and seeds, the things we should all be eating more of. So it's creating a marketplace distortion, essentially. On the other side of things, we have a glimmer of hope, I think. The SNAP program, which unfortunately more than 50 million Americans depend on in order to feed their families, is a critical lifeline for a lot of people. And the good news is that Wholesome Wave has a program for doubling the value of SNAP dollars for fruits and vegetables. This is currently being accessed by about 500,000 people on a pilot basis in 20 states. And what they're finding is that when people are given access to this, they buy more fruits and vegetables, they eat more fruits and vegetables, and of course, they're healthier because of it. And so I find a lot of hope in this. If we want healthy, ethical, sustainable food for all, which is our mission at Food Revolution Network, I think that one of the key things we have to look at is how we can create systems that make it easier for especially the people who are having the hardest time to do the right thing. Unfortunately, right now we almost have the opposite, where it feels like it costs your whole paycheck to eat whole foods because of the subsidy systems. And so I'm just curious how you think we can bridge this gap, because, right now, so many people are struggling to make ends meet. And statistically, the poorer you are and the darker your skin color, the more likely you are to struggle to feed your family healthy food, and the more likely you are to die prematurely from lifestyle-induced illness. Do you have any insights on this, and on any steps you think we could take as a society to help shift things?
Well, I'll tell you, growing up, so my parents, when we came to America, we were 10 years old. We grew up in Gardena, which is in Southern California. And I went to school in Compton, which is unfortunately has been popularized for all of its negatives and none of its positives. But I can tell you, every grocery store that we ever went to, we had all of the fast food available. The moment you walked in, it was right there for you. And I remember being really, really hungry, and I had either a quarter or 50 cents in my pocket, and there was Taco Bell or some fast food place where I could rush into. And it was very, very cheap, and it was easily accessible. So if you want people to eat more fruits and vegetables, and you have already created an unfair advantage for every other processed food to be easily accessible and cheap, the only way to level the playing field is exactly what you're describing, which is you have to be able to make food readily available and cheap. Make fruits and vegetables have the subsidy, have these big corporations have the partnerships, and be able to say, look, yes, we will do the double up bucks. We will go ahead and create opportunities for people to be able to focus more. And that becomes so important. One of the trends that I'm seeing now, and I'm glad that people are starting to think about a whole foods plant-based diet, but a lot of the new products that are coming out, frankly, the people who are very poor, they can't afford them. So even though there's a movement towards shifting away from meat and moving towards fruits and vegetables, my fear is that the gap between the haves and the have-nots is actually getting bigger.
Yeah.
Even in our plant-based movement, I believe that it's getting bigger, and we need to look at those people who are barely making rent, who are barely working 2-3 jobs and coming home and dead tired, and their bellies are hungry and their children are hungry. What they want is cheap, and they want fast.
Right. And when you're in a state of stress, you're more likely to want things that relieve that stress quickly, which are going to tend to be the things that give you a rapid burst of blood sugar, for example. So there's also a biological craving at a time like that. No one is inclined to save water if their house is on fire. And when you're in a state of emergency and you're inflamed systemically and your family is hurting and struggling and scared, you're much more likely to take short-term action that helps you make it through the day rather than thinking long-term. Yes. And so these create vicious circles, but unfortunately they deepen because the primary cause of bankruptcy in the United States is medical care. And so we have generation after generation of people who are dying penniless, unable to leave anything to their children because whatever they may have accumulated or saved over a lifetime of hard work gets eaten up by medical bills at the end. And to me, this is tragic, but it's also a little glimmer of hope. Because here's the thing, folks, if we can turn some of these cycles around, then we can end intergenerational cycles of poverty. We can actually start to shift the economic context if we strategically invest in the health and well-being of low-income communities. Yes. In time, they will become less low-income because there's nothing more debilitating to your earning power than physical pain, brain fog, fatigue, and chronic illness. And there's nothing more debilitating to your bank account than chronic disease that robs your family of whatever meager resources you may have accumulated. And so we're at a place now where any caring human who wants to see economic opportunity and freedom for all needs to ask, how can we uplevel the health of the communities that are struggling the most right now? And as you keep coming back to this point that a lot of people are really confused about what's healthy, I think that's critical, because there's no shortage of doctors telling their patients you need to eat better. But what does that actually mean? I think Michael Pollan said it pretty well: eat food, not too much,
Not too much.
mostly plants.
Yes, my 7 favorite words that I have used in every single lecture I've given for the last 10 years. So yes.
Absolutely. So I'm curious, this is a question you may not get too often, but you have a background in Taekwondo. And I'm curious what martial arts have taught you about the principles that are needed to create positive impact in the world, to move through life in a good way.
It's really interesting. Well, first, I've never been asked this question, so that's fantastic. But I think the beauty that I found in martial arts was that it gives you self-discipline. And as you start to give that self-discipline and you start to get that confidence in your own abilities, what you also start to find is the most important thing in your life, which is your why. My whole life is all about, what is my why? Why am I here? I'm grateful to my mom and dad. I'm lucky to be born. I'm lucky to have health and so forth. But what am I really doing? And, part of martial arts, what it teaches you is help your fellow man, right? Whoever that person is in front of you, if they're in need and you have the ability to defend them, to defend their wrongs, right? To promote justice. There's all these codes that I remember in my Taekwondo studio. Every day when we would start class, we would take an oath. We would start our class with the oath that we would defend whoever was in need. Well, what I do now is I defend the people who are in need. I defend the defenseless. This whole conversation today is about, how do we promote this message of health? How do we get large organizations to focus on prevention, not just treatment, not just waiting till the disease is there? That's what martial arts is all about. Yes, it's great to be able to learn all the moves and strengthen yourself, but really martial arts is designed to make you a better human being. And the definition of a better human being is, what are you going to do for the person in front of you?
Yeah. Well, that's a beautiful definition, isn't it? What are you going to do for the person in front of you? I remember Abraham Lincoln once said, "I care not much for a man's religion whose dog and cat are not the better for it." Dog and cat, of course, is a beautiful message. Animal rights activists have seized upon that and said, okay, look, we need to treat animals like sentient beings that deserve our respect. But we could also apply that to every domain of life, couldn't we? At the end of the day, who you are as a human being has a heck of a lot to do with how you impact those around you. Are you a source of love, of health, of wellness, of contribution? I believe that each of us has something of a moral imperative in a world that is hurting like ours is today, with so much suffering and pain. There is something of a moral imperative in each of us to be a part of the solution. Standing by is really not an option anymore, not with all that's at stake, because as human beings, I don't think we were born just to live and cope and survive and die. I think each of us were born with something to give, something to contribute, something to bring to the world. So the question is, what now? How can we be a part of the solution on this planet? And to me, health is a means to an end. It's not an end in itself. I want to be healthy so I can love more, live more, and serve more. So I can help others be more healthy, so they can love more, live more, and serve more, so that we can all do what we were born to do and bring about more beauty, more peace, more dignity, more freedom, and more joy on this planet. So Dr. Hashmi, I just want to thank you for your leadership, your wisdom, and the profound impact you're having, not just on your patients, which is tremendous, but on so many other patients on the way that medicine is practiced, on the way that it's thought of. And I hope that one day doctors really will be applying lifestyle and medicine first, second, and third. Lifestyle-based medicine first, second, and third, and of course implement all of the medical technologies and drugs and surgeries and so forth when necessary. And if they do, it will be in no small part because of you and others like you that have led the way.
I look forward to that day. And I hope in yours and my lifetime, we both get to see that.
Yes, me too. All right. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me.